Steve Nichols. I teach at Wake Forest University Law School in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. I used to have some expertise in the commercial law and debtor creditor area, but that subject, I got older and that subject got more difficult. I've lost my expertise, and so years ago I got interested in technology to complement my substantive expertise. And beginning in about the mid-90s, I began working with West Publishing Company with technology, specifically the beginnings of what later became known as Twen. So I've been involved with Twen from the very beginning with a number of other professors who have, from the start, served as advisors in the development of Twen, which was really designed to be a tool by law professors, for use by law professors to supplement other tools that could be available. And especially as an important means to get to content and to tie that content into classroom activities and to courses generally. So that's why I'm here this morning, really to moderate this program, which the morning session is designed to talk and have some of my friends and colleagues talk to you about getting started with Twen, their experiences with Twen. And before we get to that, I'd like to introduce a couple of people who are here this morning who are very big backers of Twen, and folks you ought to know. One is Dave Oliveri, who is Vice President of West Group for Legal Education. Dave will be here, I guess, both of the day today, and is happy to talk to you about West Group and legal education, and certainly anything with respect to Twen. And also Justin Hummel, who is the project manager for Twen. He can be reached at West and is always there to answer any questions that you have about it. He's in charge of the overall project for Twen, can put you in touch with the technical folks or any other reference people that you need with respect to the product. I'm not going to talk much at all today, except maybe just a few minutes at the end, but rather two better speakers to talk about Twen and getting started with it. First, Norman Garland, who teaches at Southwestern in Los Angeles. Both he and Marina teach in the civil procedure and criminal procedure area. Norman goes off in a different direction with evidence. Marina goes off in the direction of civil rights. Norman has written extensively especially in the evidence area. His best piece is a wonderful piece, international comparative piece about corporations and self-incrimination, which I've used a number of times myself. But law students and litigators.
No, anybody ever used it.
Law students and litigators love him for his 9-step analysis for hearsay and relevance, which is widely used among law students across the country. Norman has been using Twen for some time, and I think it's fair to say he's an enthusiastic user, an honest user of it. Will tell you all of his experiences. Marina Shea graduated from Bolt and clerked for Justice Stevens of the United States Supreme Court. And even though compared to Norman and me, she is a relative newcomer to legal education. She is nevertheless, her home now is Bolt, but she has taught at Columbia, has taught at NYU, has taught at the University of California, San Francisco, and will be visiting away from Bolt at Davis next year. She is still, though, at heart a civil rights litigator, but for our purposes was one of the earliest users of Twen back in the days when Twen, this is before the web, when Twen was based on Lotus Notes. I was the very first person to use it. It was used in a contracts class of 125 people, and all the students got 16 discs. Every student had 16 discs that client set, and still loved it. Still had a wonderful experience, and I hope you'll join in the discussion. But what we'll do is to start with Marina today talking about a few points that she wants to make in the beginning, kind of setting it up for her and Norman, and then they will simply continue the discussion with you. And at the very end, Justin Hummel and I will give you a short walkthrough of the new user interface that will be available this fall to show you how the new steps to getting started with Twen in the fall.
Thanks, Steve. The fact that Steve was standing and gave this CALI presentation the first time I started doing Twen, I thought meant that, oh, this must be really easy. It is now on the web, and I hear that it's going to get even easier. I don't even want to remember the days of Lotus Notes. Really, I have to say that. Why do this at all? I mean, why when, I don't know how many years ago when Steve came through Bolt, I said, oh, wow, of course I have to do this. This is great. And I think you have to ask that question before you decide why you want to get involved in any kind of enterprise, like a virtual classroom. What is it that you're trying to get out of this? It's going to take some amount of your time and attention. The students are going to expect you to have a reason to be imposing this on them, just the same reason that you'd have to have for why you're going to ask them to use a problem book, or why it is that you've asked them to, heaven forbid, read a whole book on the side during the semester or something. And so you have to know why you're getting into Twen. And you will probably discover that it is an evolving set of goals and rewards, some that you didn't even imagine before you got started. For me, I was concerned about not having enough time in the classroom. Like most law professors, I can talk until whenever. And we just ran out of time to talk about the good stuff, particularly the subjects that aren't so much the black letter law. You hit the end of the classroom and you just hit why it is that half of your students are now shifting around and are incredibly unhappy at this Judge Posner decision that seems to assume a certain state of the universe. And the bell rings and everyone has to leave. And you come to class, the next class, and you talk about something else. And so the simmering concern of students that certain subjects just never get talked about, and that you as the controller of the classroom are the one who's sort of imposing this sort of view with blinders about what the law should be, can be very frustrating for people. So again, there are many different reasons why people do this. That was my primary reason. I said, I need more space. I need more places for students to have conversations with each other and with me about the material. So it was really just an extension of the classroom. And it turned into a lot more than that. It turned into an easy way of giving out handouts without me having to stand at the Xerox machine. They could get online and punch the little printer button and do it themselves. It turned into a way of me being able to say, oh wow, did you see that interesting article that was in the paper yesterday about something? Something that I used to always want to just point out, but never wanted to bother to Xerox for 90 students, but now I can just post it, and sure enough, different people will talk about it. And then it turned into this place for us to have these additional discussions. Increasingly, then it turned into, and we'll talk about some of this in the afternoon session about getting students involved, a way of students dealing with each other more in discussion groups, of creating virtual study groups, which is something that I had actually played with the idea of assigning study groups in my classes as a useful learning device. You can create virtual study groups much, much easier with a virtual classroom. And so there have been all sorts of ways that the forum has now changed the content and the ways I use it. Having said that, and if there aren't true believers on why this is worth doing, we can certainly talk about that some more. I just wanted to make a couple of comments about the logistics of getting started with Twen. It is really not that hard. It turns out that when I went to visit at USF this past year, I showed up 2 days before the classes started or something, and I said, oh, by the way, I really want to do Twen. It's something that I'm addicted to. Picked up the phone, called the West rep, and she said, sure, you can do it, absolutely. And I had my forums and my classroom set up in an hour. And it wasn't hard at all. Now, I already knew what forums I wanted to use, but I don't use very many. Norm uses 500 forums, and that's too complicated for me. I just have 2 or 3 that I do, and I could set them up in a few minutes. And then the content grows across the year, so you don't have to put anything in it. I mean, there were a whole bunch of people, actually. It was really great. I came to USF and said, oh, this is really worth doing. And people said, oh, that's interesting. Okay. So they all set up empty classrooms. And some of the classrooms filled up because they ended up using it over the year, and sometimes they didn't because they weren't sure what they were, they didn't really follow through with what they were doing. But the logistics are quite easy. There were 2 important considerations before I decided to set it up at all. One was to check with the information services personnel at the school. and say, I am getting ready to do something that will involve X number of students who need to get onto the web on a regular basis. And you can presume that a chunk of them do it on their own, from home, all the time, all night long. And there's going to be a chunk of them who have never done it before, and they're going to come to you, and they're going to ask you to hold their hand all the way through this process of figuring out how to get on the web. And be ready for this. And let's talk about the physical setup of the computer lab. Is there going to be space? Is there going to be a place? Are there going to be times? I'm going to put it in my first handout to tell students you can go to the computer lab and get onto the web. And they just need to know about that. Other people at the school will appreciate knowing that you're getting ready to do this. It's not that much of a burden on them that there ought to be a heads up. And often they'll say, oh yeah, we've been doing that for years or whatever, or oh yeah, our legal writing students have already had to do X, Y, and Z, and so you know then what your students already know about. The second concern before getting started, and I think it's a shrinking concern, but nonetheless is still one that I have, particularly coming out of a public school, is the burden that it might create on students for equal access and for sufficient access to the equipment, to the internet now with the system. It was more of a problem, and it is, I think, more of a concern on the system that doesn't just hook into the internet. But now it's really just a question of saying, is there enough access for whatever purposes you're going to use this for in the classroom for students to be able to get on? And my baseline is to feel reassured that there is plenty of space and terminal available at the school at the kind of hours that it makes me feel comfortable saying to them, you're responsible now for getting on, for knowing what's going on, and so on. And you know, some students will obviously be extremely computer friendly and be way ahead, and other students, this may really, I think it's still possible to say this may be their first time that they've done something interactive with a computer besides word processing. Or at least I still find those students showing up. Having said that, then you set it up. And I don't know, I can show you just, I use very, very simple forms in my classroom. You have to think through a little bit of what you're going to use the Twen system for in order to decide what kinds of structures to set up. I have generally had one that simply says, this is all of my stuff for you. My syllabus that I update every week, and therefore I don't have to keep apologizing when I change the reading all the time, because I do, because it's updated every week, or every class really. It's not working? No, username should be HSIEH.
Oh, backwards. Sorry.
And okay, and then I have, and in that I post everything. I say, here are my extra office hours this week. I say, here's a change in the schedule. Here's when we're going to show a film at lunch. Here's the syllabus, basic stuff. So that's assignments and announcements. And then I set up a discussion forum, which is for anybody to talk about anything. And I leave it very unstructured. I set up a lot of categories within the discussion that track the material and then that also address other subjects. Like, you can step outside of the subject matter of civil procedure and tell me things about the course that bother you, or talk about policy issues or something like that. And then my last category, what was my last category in civil procedure? She says going back.
Problems and examples.
Oh, problems, and examples. And they ask for that sooner or later, of course. And we worked through some of those together, and I posted old exams and so on. In other classes, I have put up a few other different forms. I've had, for example, an assignment that students have had to post, and so I've created a special place. If you go to criminal procedure, actually you'll see that there's something called police ride-along reports, because I require all of my students to do a police ride-along and to write a report, and then they have to post it. And then actually everyone's required to read it, because that's considered fair game for material for the course. So I created a few different forms for those things. But you can do a lot of things or a few things. For me, it's, I don't know. I don't like having to check email, and so I don't like checking things, and so I don't like going to a lot of places. So I just have a couple of places. You have to make some decisions about what kind of classroom you want to have. Do you want everyone to have to participate in it or not? Do you want to have outsiders participate in any way, either other professors perhaps from your school, other students in other sections? For example, we talked about, a con law professor and I this past year talked about having joint discussions in some overlapping issues between race discrimination and con law when they came up, and we actually shared some students. You need to think about whether or not you're going to allow students to post to various forums, or are these only for yourself, whether or not you're going to allow students to post anonymously. And those are all the kinds of questions that you have to make a decision about, usually once and only occasionally revisit. Like, are you going to call students by their first name or their last name? Well, it's like that. You decide, are you going to have anonymous postings or not, and then you live with the choices, the advantages and the disadvantages of those choices. I wanted to say a couple of things about student startup and the ways to think about integrating students into this kind of virtual classroom. I require some minimal participation in Twen. I've made a decision to make it required in part because I think that that breaks the ice and gets students involved. Along with that, I always require some de minimis posting at the beginning of the semester, which forces students to be registered and sign on and touch the keyboard. And having done that, then I usually let them go free and do whatever they want. And some catch on and really do it, and some don't. But I do think that that is a useful thing to think about. And if you go that direction, that is to require things, then I think it's worth it to, at the beginning of the year, state matter-of-factly that this is part of your class. I put it in my first handout. I explain it in the section that goes right along with the part that says, and you will be required to write a paper, and your class participation counts in bumps on closed grades, and there is a virtual classroom, and your participation in the classroom counts as participation. And you will have a certain assignment that you will have to do online at least once each semester. I just tell them that up front. And like most students, particularly the first years, if you tell them, that's it. Okay. That's the way the universe works, right? So I think it is important, though, to tell them that at the beginning. There will be a minor amount of distress on the margin from a few students who don't want to touch a computer. And that's, I mean, I think I'm on this panel for diversity purposes, because I am, not for the obvious diversity purposes, but because I actually don't understand anything about computers. And I think Twen is the only acronym that I actually understand. I really do not understand any of this stuff. And it's sort of this point-and-click thing, and it works. And so I always respond by simply saying, look, it's point-and-click. If I can do it, you can do it. And I guess and just click on things all the time, too. And so go ahead. You know, just don't say anything that you're not willing to send anywhere in the universe. But there will be a few students who have that problem, but I think it's very, very minimal. I do think, I mean, I give them handouts. Wes provides these nice little laminated cards that say how to get started, how to sign in. I just hand it out first day of class along with the first informational handout. Steve, are you the person who gives the first class assignment that's just a web address?
Yes.
Yeah. Steve is radical. First day posting for your first class reading, it's just a web address. You go there and figure out what you're supposed to do. I have to admit, I'm not that radical. I hand them all these things. Oh, you have to do this. But I give them all the instructions. But Wes just provides that you staple it onto the back, and it's just a handout. But I do think it's important to start students on it right away and early on. I think that's all I'm going to say about this startup at this point. Like I said, I can talk forever. That announces Norman Vaughn.
Well, I think I'm going to stand up. I can't talk to a group sitting. I want to mention, perhaps a little redundantly, a couple of things that Marina touched upon having to do with startup issues. First of all, I've been fighting with my administration. If I had it my way, no one would get a syllabus, and I hadn't thought about just a web address. Maybe I'll do that this year. My syllabus is on the Twen page, and the administration ordered me to make hard copies and hand them out, and I fought hard not to. I also cannot require my students to participate in Twen, but I make it so that if they don't, they will regret it. I have no power to withhold points or give points. My school eliminated the ability of the professor to give additional points for participation years ago. But I just put stuff on the Twen page that if students don't get it and have access to it in the middle of the night, they're going to be very much out of it in the classroom. I really believe in this. I perhaps should say why I was so enthusiastic about Twen. And I don't know why I wasn't asked to be one of the professors who advised. I've been using computers since 1968, and the reason I use Twen is that I've been waiting to use something like Twen. It's a dream I've had since actually 1965. So to me, it was not a question of whether to, it was when can I and show me how. Perhaps the bottom line is that I have believed in visual presentation in the classroom since I was a student. My handwriting stinks, so I can't stand in front of the room and write on a blackboard and make any sense. And I've always, therefore, used some form of overhead projection. So the idea of having what is now I'm capable of putting on Twen and then bringing it into the classroom, which I do, was a dream, and this is now really coming true. Last year was the first year the Twen was available. It's the first time I got to use it. I used it in the fall semester in my evidence class. I had over 100 students in that class, and it was, for my use, immeasurably successful. I think the students would give it a mixed review because many of them just felt like it was one more thing they had to learn and study. And if I put materials on the Twen page, just like putting an overhead in the classroom and handing it out, they'd say, why are you bothering us with another piece of paper, with another visualization of something? Now I have to not only learn the rule and the cases, but I have to learn this thing you put up on the overhead. But those people who look at it that way are really a distinct minority. The overwhelming response has been to both my presentation of overheads and to the use of Twen incredibly receptive. The startup problems, I think that you should not discount them. There are people who, well, if you could go back to the My Twen, yeah, right there. You see that thing at the bottom right with the pencil that says, I'd like to register? Half your students won't see that. They will tell you there's no place on the Twen startup page to register. So you have to have at least a session, and there's usually a West representative available in your area who will come and invite your students to attend. The unfortunate thing is that the people who attend that are not the people who need it. So consequently, you will also have to have a session with your tech people in the library or the computer lab or somewhere in the school who your students go to when they can't get the computer to work right. And you'll have to have a session with them. Be sure to invite them to the West session, the West representative session. Be sure you tell them what you're doing. Be sure you go over and make sure they know how to register on Twen and that they have the sheets that West provides, the plastic things, and they'll walk your students through it when inevitably the student sits down and for some reason or other can't get on. Register the first time and continue to get on. I mean, I love the experience I had with this one student. She loved Twen, she told me. She bought a new computer to be able to get on Twen. She went home and she tried to do it, and she couldn't do it. And I kept saying, well, did you write down your username and password? And she said, oh, sure I did. I said, are you using it? Are you sure it's correct? Oh, sure. After 2 weeks, where she kept telling me, well, I tried again last night for 3 hours. She finally came into my office, and of course, she didn't know her username and password. It was just that simple. So you really have to be ready to deal with people who are perhaps not as knowledgeable or user-oriented as you would like them to be. And then I have to tell you, the issue that most of the people that were against my using Twen in my little universe was, aren't there going to be students for whom this is just and a burden that can't be overcome. People who are computer phobic, people who don't have access to a computer. And I have to tell you the answer to that is, in the first semester, I had one student who resisted and absolutely said that they couldn't do it. And finally, that student caved in towards the end of the semester when I posted my old exams. This past semester, I had a man who, we have a program for part-time law students to go during the full-time day program and go 4 years instead of 3, people with child care problems, principally. Now, this guy comes in my office the first week of class. He says, I'm 48 years old, I'm a doctor, I have child care responsibilities, and English is my 4th language, and I am computer phobic. You must give me everything by hand. I said, well, first of all, being a doctor doesn't score anything for me. Being 48, I'm 58. So I said, you know, get used to it. You're going to have to go to the library. We have a computer lab with 100 computers. It's available 18 hours a day, free to you. There's a person there who can teach you what to do. You're just going to have to learn it. Well, he fought with me the entire semester, and finally, in the last week of class, he came in and demanded that I give him the old exams that were on the Twen page because he just couldn't take the time to do it. Well, I ended up conceding, and I gave it to him, and then at the very last minute, he withdrew from the class and didn't even take the exam. So that was my worst experience. One good experience that I'd like to share with you is a 63-year-old woman in my class who had never touched a computer before, sat in the front row, came to me the first week of class and said, I don't think I can do this. I said, well, why don't you just give it a try? She became the most dedicated, avid Twen user. She learned how to use a computer, she got email, she got web access, and she absolutely loved it. So I would say to you, you're going to have a huge spectrum, perhaps, but the overwhelming majority of your law students will be computer active and will be ready, willing, and able to do this or give it a try. All right, now I'd like to talk about the organization in terms of forums. One of the things that we should look at is, why don't you go down to the entirety of one class there. This is my Constitutional Criminal Procedure class from this last semester. I have a number of more categories for the forums. If you don't know what a forum is, it's just a place within, or a category, or a location within the Twen page that gives rise to a threaded series of either materials or postings that are discussions or things you put on. So you see up here I have announcements, contests for Twen registration, general discussion, images, points, kudos to neuters. My section, we have 3 sections in the first year of law school at our school. My section had 8 out of 10 of the finalists in our intramural moot court competition, which was amazing. I thought I had a good class, and I was not surprised to see this. Practice exam, answer and key, prior exam for course, prior year's exams, prior exam for course review section. Problem solutions contest, supplemental materials syllabus. Of all of these, the principal active ones, and there's another one down below, move down, scroll down a little bit, the professor is in. Of these, the most active ones are the professor is in, problem solutions contests, and images and points. Actually, go into images and points. This is my posting of what is essentially my class notes and graphical representations for points that I have used or developed or made over the years. For example, in evidence, there's a device called Tribe's Triangle, a triangular graphic that is used to represent the hearsay rules developed by Lawrence Tribe from Harvard. I just put that on the Twen page. So here, for example, in the images part are some of these graphical images. Actually, click on Wong Sun. Actually, this version of it doesn't show up too well, but it is a graphical representation. Go back one. Do the other one. It's a graphical representation of the Wong Sun case, a very important case at the end of constitutional criminal procedure courses. Okay, go back to, now scroll down. Click on attenuation, the first attenuation. This is a slideshow representation of essentially my notes for class or questions for the class or classes on the attenuation doctrine. First slide is Wong Sun itself, and I post the questions that I'm going to ask in class. I use White and Tomkovitz's criminal procedure book. Many of you know it, and they have, one of the reasons I use it is they have the best teacher's manual I've ever seen in legal education. And I take their questions, and I've over the years developed my use of them. Many of them are just verbatim with follow-up questions and so on. And so I actually have posted essentially the essence of the teacher's manual. I did that with their permission. I told them what I was doing and asked them if they had any objection, and they wrote me back and said, God, no, we love it, which I was a little surprised about. But one of the things that I've discovered is that my students will go, I put this on before my class, sometimes the day before. If I have it prepared early enough, I put it on a week in advance. The students are encouraged to go to the page, download the material, and print it out or bring it on their computer. And most of them who are using it do that. They come to class with these sheets printed out, and as I'm asking the questions, they're writing their notes. And of course, it's surprising to me, most of the good students would see that the first question usually is answered by the second question, and so on down the line. And I'll call on students in class and ask them a question, and they just don't know the answer. And I'll go like that, pointing to the screen, and they still don't get it. Anyway, I think this is an incredibly powerful device. I was a little reticent to do this, but I resisted my reticence, and I'm not at all sorry I have. It's changed my teaching from putting the, in my overhead projections in the classroom, I used to put the content of the material. Now I'm putting the questions rather than the content. So it's really changed my approach. It's honed down and made much more pointed my classroom presentation. And the students who are doing this work and doing Twen tell me that it's incredibly rewarding for them. It really captures a different attitude in the classroom. All right, let's go back. The next is hypothetical solutions, problem solutions contests. I use contests as a device to get students to participate. I give prizes. But mostly, I'm trying to stimulate the preparation for class. All the casebooks that I use or have used in my courses have hypotheticals or problems at the end of the subchapters as we cover them. We all do. Or you make your own or whatever. I assign to my students by creating a forum. This is at the top here, balancing and other contexts problems that presents. You click on that. This is a forum for the students who wish to post solutions to the hypotheticals. Post your solution to any of problems 5B, etc. by clicking respond to main topic below. The students who wish to post a solution do so, and then if you go back, scroll down a little bit. Hold on. Oh, I guess I didn't post the winner. Scroll down a little further. Mark wins. I declare a winner. In class, I announce the winner and have them come up to the front of the class to thundering applause, and I give them a prize. And of course, what I knew before I ever started this is that the prize does not matter. It's actually declaring a winner stimulates from a lot of people a desire to participate, and the public accolades are rewards in themselves. Although sometimes I've given some pretty nifty prizes. I gave a grand prize for both semesters of a meal at my home, cooked and served by me. And I am a master chef and renowned as such. So my students were very eager to win that prize. I gave 3 of those per class per semester for the winner and their significant other. All right, go back up. To give you an example of how I think this works best, if you would go to the top one, put response, click on response. When I do this, and I think in its best mode, is the students' solutions, whether they're good or bad, whether they win or don't win, I would try to, if you scroll down, comment. So I put my comments to the student's solution into a response, my comments in red or whatever. This gives me the opportunity to really go into feedback at a level that I could never do in any other setting. And I only got to do this 3 or 4 times during the semester because of time, but I thought it was incredibly successful. Okay, if you could get out of there and go back to the okay, move down. Oh, I'm sorry, go back one. Back, page back.
Oh, I'm sorry.
The other form I wanted to point out is the professor is in. This is what I hoped would become my virtual office hours, widely attended. Student participation in this was the only place that I allowed anonymous posting by students. And I found the best participation here, but it was among about 10% of the class, whereas about 20 to 30% participated in the hypothetical solutions. It was only about 10% in the discussions. I have another forum called General Discussion where I expected students to discuss amongst themselves. I need to work on that. I have not been able to get student participation to any substantial degree on that. But if you click into response down here, no, up one, that one. This was from a student who turned out to be one of my best students, maybe the best student I've ever had anywhere. What I found was he would ask a question or make an observation, and there's his in black. And in preparing a response to this guy, I ended up preparing for class. Took me, on this one, maybe an hour. On another couple, he asked one after the first class that just blew my mind on the nature of the cat's expectation of privacy test. Scroll down. And here I have put in my, actually this dovetailed into his first question. This was his last question. This was a standing question, for those of you who know Chrome Pro. And you can see that my answer had to get pretty detailed. But it doesn't reflect the thinking that I had to go through to answer than what I did in terms of class presentation. When I went to class to respond to this, and I made it clear what I was doing, I told him that I thought he was the kind of student that made teaching worthwhile. And he got a standing ovation from a 90-student second semester, first year class, which I thought was pretty amazing. Okay. I guess, I want to talk very briefly about the use of this for delivery of supplemental materials and exams. The cost factor of using Twen is going to be an issue. My school will not sign the contract for school usage, so each student has to pay on their own. But as I am going to point out to them, This semester, I'm not having my students buy the supplement to the casebook. If you can go to the Supplemental Materials. And I didn't last semester either. In the Supplemental Materials, and this is one of the main benefits of Twen as far as I'm concerned, I have, and I will have in this coming semester, every case and article that I want and would appear in a supplement to the casebook linked on Twen. If you click on one of the links, all you have to do is list the material, click again, and because of Twen's interface with Westlaw, the case comes up and the student has it. And I can assign it. Now, it's not edited, it's the full text, but to me, that justifies the payment. Another thing is that when I first started using overheads years ago, and through the time that I started Twen, I took 10 minutes a class on the average, handing out pieces of paper. Because if I showed something in class, I felt I had to give it to them in writing as well. Now, all I do is put it on the Twen page, and it's up to them to download. So I don't have to hand it out. Question back there?
The thing that seems like such a marvelous thing to be able to do, and the thing that's been driving me crazy is organizing. Organizing the supplemental materials. Because they all come up chronologically in terms of when I put them. I can't put any structure to them the way I can add them.
Go to my syllabus.
They're all listed in the order you
posted. But in my syllabus, I have a reference, and if I don't have it in this one, it's in my next one. I have a reference, go to the syllabus itself. I insert the case into the syllabus so they can cross-link it there. If they're following the syllabus, it can go chronologically. Scroll down. Keep going. Keep going. There you go. I do a day by day, class by class. Now in here, I only have the case names, but if you put the citation in after the case name, it'll come up on the Twen page, hyperlinked. So you can tell your students they've got a choice. They can either read the syllabus or wait for you to make an announcement either on the Twen or class. Remember, you've got to read case such and so or read article such and so for out of the supplemental materials for this class, or follow on the syllabus.
as long as it's on Westlaw rather than PDF file.
Yes.
If I might just answer that in a real short bit, you can also arrange your page. Not only you can do it besides chronological. That's the default. But you can create categories.
Right.
So they come chronologically in reverse chronology within categories. I want to be able to order them within a category.
And keep them that way.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's tough.
Anything, have them come up in actual chronological order. So the first thing I post still looks like the first thing you're seeing.
Right.
If anything, if nothing else, I'd like to be able to flip a switch and get that.
I think that's a good point. I've just learned to live with it.
Yeah.
But if you could change it, that would be great.
What do you do when 100 students comes out on 140 pages? Instead of 10 pages of some also went through and edited instead of a textbook, now you have 100 students in your class putting out 100.
I don't know what the issue is. The cost?
Not only the cost, but the kind of, law reviews bring you can't put out our material no longer.
Well, they don't.
Print out the pages.
At our school, if a student is going to print something out, they've got to pay for it themselves. All right. There's two answers. One is don't print it. Download it onto a disk and take it home with you. Secondly, if you want to print it at home on your own. That's the rule that I use for my students. They should not be printing everything in the library or school printer on a regular basis, and they have to learn that very quickly. And I thought that in our school, they learned it very quickly when we went from free to them having to pay for it. They stopped doing that almost overnight.
But who uses the cost of students? What is the cost?
They're going to address that in a moment.
Okay.
I'm going to use the system where I urge my students to go for, per student, $20 for a year through the summer for all Twen usage for the entire year. That means anybody at my school who uses Twen, any student who registers once for $20, gets to use it for the entire year for all. Otherwise, it's 15 per semester. The one last point I wanted to make, and then I'm going to sit down, is about prior exams and practice exams and review sessions. I post, and I keep control over the posting of my prior exams to use as a study vehicle for my students. So about 6 weeks before the end of the semester, I post a selected couple of prior final exams, let my students work out the solutions, and then provide them with model answers and answer keys. Then I post another final exam before the end of the semester, which becomes the vehicle for a review session. And after the review session, I post the model answer and grading key on the Twen page for everybody. In addition, I give practice exams in my classes. I give the practice exam, and instead of grading it, I just hand it back, and then I post on the Twen page a model answer and a grading key, and then invite students to participate in a discussion if they wish to. And I find that that works very well.
Well, Ray, thanks very much. I want to say that first that this afternoon there'll be 2 more sessions with respect to Twen, and normally Ray will be back later in the afternoon to talk about in more detail of getting students involved in using Twen. And then right after lunch there'll be a separate program on using Twen as a collaborative device among law schools and among law professors right after lunch. I was going to suggest with respect to the printing out, I agree with Norman. There's a middle ground there, one of which is I frequently download the cases and edit them myself and then put them up. So instead of linking to one case that's 500 pages long, another problem, I download it and take the little piece I need out of it, edit, and then simply put it up on the Twen. So it's kind of a middle position. It's very easy to do because you can sit there, and that to me has been the most significant piece of Twen. And I've already disclosed that I've been involved with this for a long time. But I'll also disclose to you that I don't use Twen exclusively. I build my own websites. Wake Forest, which I am new at Wake Forest. I suppose my career at the University of Minnesota at a time when we had zero technology. And I went from zero technology to one of the richest environments of anywhere in the country, including this place, where there are Ethernet connections at every spot, everywhere. It was done long before I got there. And we have a wonderful staff, huge IS staff, although just lost Robin Simons to Connecticut, who's a brilliant fellow. But we've got a wonderful staff here who can support me. Law schools don't have that. If you're there, you may be the only one who's trying to support the faculty. But I use a wide range, as I do before electronics came along, using Foundation and West and Little Brown and Matthew Bender and everything else. I've written for West, I've written for other publishers as well. So I see Twen as one tool that I don't use exclusively, even though I'm tied pretty close to it. I build my own web pages. I fiddled around with building a class on DC. Why use Twen, which really is kind of an underlying question, especially if some of you are professionals in this area. You can do this sort of thing yourself now on your own systems. And some of you are very, very good at that. It's even if the faculty don't want to get involved, you can even off the shelf something like Front Page now and include discussion groups and do a lot of this. Why? These are the questions. Why use this at all? If you decide to use technology, why use Twen? And the answer to that, which I think is a very important one, the answer, at least for me right now, is the connection to content first. With respect to Twen, I do, for students, I do outlines as well, and a teaching outline for the students, where I build in the content. And then I have links for the cases, the statutes, and all of that. And I build those on using Word, and I don't know anything about technology either, which is why I got involved in this to begin with, to get somebody to help me do it. But build these outlines in Word, upload them, and Twen automatically links all the cases, the statutes, the law review articles, anything that's on in a Westlaw database will automatically be hotlinked. So I can do an outline and upload it, and it is there. And Twen was designed from the start, and I know because I was there, to be closely integrated with Westlaw, to be a part of legal research, legal education, and law practice. And so the folks who've been working on this have tried to keep it very closely tied to Westlaw, which explains the next user interface. Again, that was the goal in the beginning. The next user interface is kind of the ultimate step. Twen becomes part of Westlaw, West Online. There will be a link on Westlaw to Twen, and there's a link, all kinds of links from Twen back in to Westlaw. And getting started is going to be tremendously easy. We've all thought, at least those of us who started playing with this stuff years ago, that it was pretty easy, but all of us want things to be easier and more efficient. So now in the fall, when a faculty member decides she wants to use Twen, all she has to do is to go to Westlaw, or she can go to westgroup.com, or she can go to Twen. You don't have to remember anything special. If you remember just Westlaw, then there's going to be a link from Westlaw. You'll get to the first page. You go back up and show them how to create a course.
Yep, the first one.
Okay.
Now realize we're doing this from within a course that we've already set up, a custom page. When you go in, say, to Twen.com, you would see something similar to what we're about to see here, where you have two different options. You can go with an easy course creation, kind of like a creation wizard, like you would see in most of your proprietary software packages. And along with that, you have the ability to customize your course and create and bring in a number of things into that and kind of tailor it.
But what I'm guessing is, what I tell my friends at West, and Dave Oliveri, I think who knows this too, is that the folks out there that we're trying to get to use Twen, any kind of technology, really not the 10 or 15% who are really heavily interested in technology. It's the typical law professor who right now we know is not working on classes, is probably in Europe somewhere working on a law review article or doing something else, not thinking about day-to-day teaching. We've got to make it easy for her and give some value added there, some reason to use this technology. The content, I believe, is the key. But what she does is simply goes to this first page. She wants to create, have the program itself create the course for her. And now we all use this software where you can simply do the typical installation and do the custom installation. What you do is create, if you want to do the typical installation from the first page, is to choose that option, and then you'll get this page. And all you have to do is create a course on Twen. The hardest part is remembering your Westlaw ID. You can get that from the librarian. And then once you get that, you get on here and create, you simply type in the name of the course that you're going to have. Here we're using torts, the duration of the course. And now it asks you to select the course topic. And the reason for that is in this kind of default or standard configuration, it will bring up and add content to the page automatically without the faculty member having to do anything. For instance, this keys into the CALI exercises. So if you select torts as a course area, when the course is created, then the CALI exercises will automatically be linked on the home page of the course. And various other content that will come along with West topical highlights, West databases that are in sync with the area in which you selected. So the professor goes in, puts in the name of her course. Sometimes, as we know, law professors don't have names that match up with categories, so we ask you to tell us which standard category your course falls in to get this automatic content, including the CALI exercises. And then, again, we're thinking about content and trying to get faculty and students involved in their own discussion and tied into content, easy tying in. We then ask them, the author, the teacher, if she's using a West or Foundation book. If she is, then she's going to get a drop-down list that will ask her what's the name of the book. She clicks on the name of the book that's listed there, and if she's using a West or Foundation book and makes that choice, Then when she creates the page, automatically the teacher's manual for that book will be added to her Twen page, for her, not for her students. We are also working, some of us at West are arguing that authors' problems in the book should automatically be uploaded into a discussion forum. So it populates that page with content. Simply by putting in the name of the course, telling West what area it is, explaining, reporting if you do use a Western Foundation book, and then clicking on a drop-down list what it is. You just make those choices, you press submit, and bingo, the course is created based upon that standard configuration, all of which can be changed. And what you'll end up with, and what we've done here is we have several courses already up there, but it will create, it'll add this West content, including Facebook content up there automatically, and links to CALI and that sort of thing. And then we'll also add several different databases in the beginning. A discussion forum will automatically be created. There will be a database for course administration, and then a database for materials that will be added as default. All of these things can be changed. You can go back in and customize it to add more. And that's one of the important aspects of this. There are not many Normans in the world teaching. I'm tenured and can get away with saying that. Ain't going to be moving around. Norma is an extraordinary teacher who spends a lot of time with students. We all know that most law faculty aren't going to put the time in with discussing with students as Norman has. But Twen doesn't have to be used just for that. It's very versatile. It can be used even if all you want to do is use it as a way to publishing to your students. And there are other ways, such as course collaboration, that we'll talk about this afternoon. But it's a tool that can be fully customized easily from this desktop, simply using the whatever connection you've got to the internet. But we do now have the standard, and you'll see the look. It's the same look, it's the same feel as Westlaw, with easy links back and forth between the two. The whole idea is to try to make it as easy as possible for the faculty member to use, so that we don't have to invest our time in learning HTML coding and all of that sort of thing. And also, and what I actually hope is, even though at Wake Forest, which again was all done before I got there, it had nothing to do with it, we have an enormous, very dedicated, very large staff with respect to technical and IS support. And they can do all kinds of things, but they simply don't have the time to go around creating websites for faculty and teaching websites, teaching faculty how to use the front page and all that. Front page in relative terms is pretty easy, but law faculty are pretty slow with respect to that stuff, and they're very, very impatient. So what I'm able to do at Wake Forest is to use Twen for the basics of my class, and to save those resources for those really special uses when they're not off working on WordPerfect or DOS for one of my colleagues. It really does become a complement and really extend the resources that we've got in law school. Because I think one of the things I've learned with respect to technology, you never have enough. How many people you have is still not going to be enough, and that's going to be true as the uses grow. So it's gotten easier along the way. It's going to be very, very easy in the fall. And I know that West is continuing to try and actually solicit ideas for making changes to continue to improve it and make it better as a supplement for teaching, not as a replacement for teaching at all, and not as anything explicit.
I wanted to add a second reason besides content, and content is obviously the huge reason to be able to do these links to actual databases. The second reason is that there is an 800 number that works 24 hours a day for all the technical stuff. And I have no idea how one would set up one's own web page, but there's no 800 number to help me out doing it. And you send the students to it. I put it right there. I mean, it's on my office door. It's posted in the computer lab. They call that number, not me. I call that number because I don't know what's happening, and it works.
This afternoon, you can get your hands on the new on Twen itself from labs in room 700 from 2 o'clock till 3 o'clock, and then from 2:30 until 4:30, 2 till 3 and 3:30 to 4:30. Lab room 700. Thank you very much. Thank you all.
One other thing, if you did get those sheets that are handed out by some less people, there's a drop box at the end to drop off your ideas. We take those seriously, and along with that, you have a chance for winning some neat gifts at the end of the conference. So I encourage you to do that.
And actually, anybody that wants pricing information on Twen, if you come see me, what I can do is I will fax you or email you a specific bid for your law school. I'll take your name.
This is Deborah Deacon, who is in the West Group and is in charge of it. Happy to talk with you. Again, it stays all America. I'm experienced in hearing your ideas and your reactions.
Thank you all for coming. We appreciate it.